Today, art students, we are going to make this. So, get yourself ready. We're going to need some supplies. So, you will need your sketchbook. Open to a blank piece of paper. We need to separate it from all the other pieces so we don't get it all wrinkly. We'll need a watercolor set. We'll need something to hold our water in and a paint palette. If you can grab those things, get it all set up. Make sure it's on the right side or the left side, depending on how you paint, whether you're right-handed or left-handed. Be mindful of where you're putting the water so it doesn't spill. You can get some extra brushes. You'll need a pencil for this as well. So get yourself set up so that you're ready. Once you are, this is what it's going to look like. We are first going to prime our colors. And that is just taking some clean water on our brush and putting it on every single one color. So here I am. I'm going to get some paper towel to clean off my brush because I don't want my colors to mix. So there it is, pinching and pulling. I'm going to get some clean water, put on the next one, and continue that process by cleaning out your brush and then keep putting clean water. So you can do that for every single color. I'm going to speed this up for y'all so you can see me doing it. So here I am going through each and every single one of my color, clean off my brush each time to make sure that they're all primed and they're ready to go. If I know exactly which, like 3 or 4 colors, I'll just do those colors. But today I don't know which colors, so I'm going to prep them all. So please pause your video at this point and make sure you prime every single one of your colors because I'm not sure which one we're going to use. So once you do that, then let's make sure our water is clean and move on. So if you're at this point, grab a can. There's plenty of them. You can use the colored pencil cans, the Band-Aid can, the pencil can, whatever you want. We're going to make several circles. I think 5. 5 different circles on here. You can place them pretty much anywhere. I'm going to overlap a couple of mine, sort of there. I'm going to balance it out. This is an asymmetrical design, so I'm thinking about different ways I can put these circles in. So I'm just making a nice little balance. Now it's looking a little heavy on the bottom, so if I just put one at the top right here, and boom, I got myself some circles. So please make 5 circles on yours. If you want to use the grid method, or not the grid method, the rule of thirds, you can. Make sure you get something on some of the focal points. You can do that really quickly. The thing is, just make sure you erase anything that's penciled that you don't want in, because any watercolor that goes on top of color pencil, you can't erase it later. So I'm just going back and correcting it. What I would like you to do is pause your video and make these circles on your work. You don't have to have them exactly like mine, but try to make it interesting. And then once you are done, press play. Once we're ready, let's make sure we have some clean water. We got some dirty water. Make sure your clean water is clean. And you can take a brush right into the clean water. And we're going to paint one of those circles just with the clean water. This is going to allow the pigment from the watercolors to flow a lot easier. So I'm just painting this up inside the lines really nice and neat, trying to get the whole thing saturated. We're going to be using a warm sort of color palette today. We're going to sort of think of being in the yellows and the oranges. So I'm going to take some yellow. And when we're working with watercolors, we want to always work with the lightest color first. And so I'm just going to put it down. And when we're putting this down, you can sort of see that the water flows really well. Really well. I'm going to actually leave some white spots because I don't want to actually have to use my white paper. Now, if I go into another one and I didn't wet it, you can see that I get a brighter color. That wet pigment on a dry paper, it is brighter than the wet paper with the wet pigment on it. So just a way to think about it. I'll clean my brush out here. I'm going to take some wet paint again and put it on that dry paper and work out this color. I'm going to go around. I'm leaving some white areas because that's what I want to be my highlight at this point. It's harder to go back with white watercolor paint on top unless you dry everything out. And we're going to be working pretty quickly today. So I'm just going to keep going. Now with clean brush, clean water, I'm going to get some orange and I'm going to paint another one. Just orange. And I'm going to do a little dabbing. That's just dotting the paper. Since we are making sort of oranges or tangerines or something, they're kind of speckled. They sort of have like a texture to it. And we want to make that in texture implied texture. It's not real texture. Because if it was real texture, you would be able to feel it. But this is implied. Now I'm going to go back with some orange, right into it, clean off my brush, get some clean water, and watch this. Straight with the clean water, right back into that pigment. And that allows me to blend it out a little bit easier and make it a little bit lighter. So you can use that technique anytime you want. Now I'm going to go back in, get a little bit darker pigment here by just going straight into that orange and then bringing it right onto the paper. What we want to think about is sort of overlapping to create space. And so when I'm coming to this corner where this other one overlaps the other one, I'm going to be very, very careful, okay? Now, we got to have our brushes clean. You can see that water is getting dirty, but that clean water is staying clean. We're going to go back into that orange here, and we're going to go back to our first one. And I think I need to re-wet my paper, so I'm just going to reactivate it. It dried a little bit, so I cleaned off my brush completely. And then I'm just going over that paint or that pigment I already put down with a wet, clean brush, and then I can put that pigment back on, and it's going to make it move easier onto our artwork here. Now, you can pause this at any point. So if I'm going way too fast, please pause. I'm just clearing this in. And really, this is all about building up layers. What we're doing is a process called glazing. We are working up light layer at a light layer and then working to a darker layer. And each layer we put on, they're going to give us a little bit more of a depth to our work. And so we don't have to glaze the whole thing exactly the same. You might want to think about the edges, where things are going behind stuff. You can use hatching, cross-hatching. You can use stippling to create the illusion of your brush strokes turning and bending. Remember, we want people to believe this is sort of like a sphere. So that means we have to have a highlight. We have to have our core shadows. We have to have those midtones in each one. And so as we're working on these and getting our colors in, just the base ones, we can do that. We have these two on the bottom though, and I want to work on those, but I want clean water. My clean water got a little dirty and my dirty water is getting a little dirtier. So I'm just taking this process of this time to empty out my water, get some others, and this allows my work to dry a little bit. So now that I got my clean water, I can go back and I'm going to start with a little bit of a purple inside this yellow. So I'm taking some yellow onto my mixing plate. I'm just putting some yellow in there. I'm getting some color right there. And then I'm going to take the complementary color of purple. So if you look at the color wheel, the opposite is purple to yellow. So I'm mixing those together and I'm going to get the right brown. I'm going to get the right brown. This is the exact brown that would be there just by using the complementary color. Now, I could pick a different brown, and that brown may work, but if you want the right brown, just take the color you're using and then take the complementary color of it, and you should get the right tone of the brown you need. So when we're thinking about mixing colors, when we're thinking about making shadows, it's easy to just be like, oh, I need a shadow color. I'm going to go straight to black. Well, a lot of great artists don't actually use straight black. What they'll do is use a blue, or they'll use a complementary color, or some even greater ones will just use a tone by adding gray to the color, and then you can get some great shadows. So what I'm doing is taking that yellow and that purple that I mix, and I'm using it to create depth here. And so you are going to do that too. I'm just using it to dab in for the core shadows across. I'm looking for some areas that might be behind other people's work. Now, if I am running out, I can just clean off my brush. I can go back and get some color. I can mix some new. Now, I mix orange in there, And what I'm going to do is take that purple and mix it with that orange, and I'm going to get even a darker color now. So this is going to be a darker brown, or a brownish red ochre. And you can see I'm using sort of like a cross-hatching kind of motion to give the illusion that there is a shadow or a line. So you can use that. So pause your video at any time, mix that color up, and come back. And you can sort of see on this one that it's giving that sort of illusion that things are rounding. We're just doing this several different ways, and we'll see how it goes. So go back in. If you need to erase anything, you can just get it wet and take a paper towel and wipe it off if you need to. Going over some of those bright areas because it might be too bright for my painting at the moment. Get some clean water. I am going to get, I think, more orange in here, and then work on some highlight areas or some shadow areas. It just depends on how you look at color and see it. I've been talking with Amanda about color a lot, and everybody sees color differently. So we're just trying to make it a replication. If there was actual oranges or tangerines that we were looking at, it might be more helpful, more easier a photo. But I'm just doing this from the top of my brain, from what I remember. And that's not always the easiest to make art, but it's a good way of practicing and seeing how well your brain is compared to an image. If you want to look at an image, you can, but we're just doing this. Now we're going to work on these bottom ones. I'm going to get that darker color from that paint palette up there, that really dark color, and I'm going to water it down because I want these to be a little bit lower. And you can sort of see I'm moving my brush around from different ones, different oranges, so that they all have similar colors in it. Let's see here. Yeah, just getting back in there, getting all that color going. And we're just putting those in there. Now, I want that one to dry. I use a hairdryer, dry it off really quickly, or I can just start painting another area. So I'm going to go just paint another area so that one I just was working on can dry and I can come back and visit it. So I'm going in with a bright orange here. And you can see I'm just going all the way around making a circle. I just want to show you that you can like pull this color again. So I'm going to make a brown. So I'm just taking some orange and then mixing it with that light purple. And that should get me a pretty decent brown that I'm going to use here. And I'm just going to fill that in all the way around. Remember to leave some areas for highlights. And then I'm going to go in with a clean brush. Never mind. Going back in, filling those areas out, and then I should go in with a clean brush of water and then blend those all together so I don't have any harsh, crisp lines around their edge. I want them to all look like they have been brought together. So I am just pushing and pulling some of that color around so the lines aren't as harsh. Now, we just have 5 orange blobs on our thing. None of them are really taking a tone, but we're going to add some darker color. So I'm going back in with a darker purple now into that brownish color I made, and I might add some more orange or yellow to this to get it a little bit lighter, but I'm looking for the next level of darkness because I want to do some shadows underneath it. Now, you can dab things in if you want to give some texture, to give some illusion of curves. You could tab that in. You could also do lines, and you could smudge or sort of mess around like by pushing and pulling. You could go back and do the same. It's going to be up to you. I like to put my darker areas right next to a highlight, and that makes it pop a little bit more. It makes it look like it's about to shine a little bit brighter in that area. Now, you don't have to do it that way, but it helps. It helps to make it the illusion a little bit more three-dimensional. Now, when I go to this one, I am working on really putting a shadow behind there because I want it to look like maybe there is some real depth there, that something is pushing that back even further. Now, when I go in and I need to make more colors. You could just make a bunch at one time to get the color you like, or you keep mixing. Just remember your ratios as you go. And if you don't like it, just wipe the color off of your palette and make it again, because you haven't wasted much. Now, I'm going to go down here with this one, and I'm thinking of a shadow above, like something is hanging above it. And so all of our shadows aren't going to be in the same place because there might be different layers. Things grow. If you've ever gone to like a your own fruit place, like a berry place or an apple orchard, things grow in front of or behind. And the shadow is what gives us this illusion of front or behind. And so it is important that we think about shadows and we think about highlights as we make it. And so when you're adding these colors in, start thinking about, what do I want it? Do I want it to be in front or behind? If something is behind, most likely it's going to be darker. It's going to be a darker value. And so think about that as we're working. As you're creating, what do you want to be in front? What do you want to be behind? And then start building those colors in that ratio. Now we're just going to get some colors in here, and we're just adding them. Adding these colors to our like and our tastes. Now, think about brush strokes, think about curve lines, think about hatching, think about stippling. These little things can add so much movement into your work. Now, right here, I just made a really straight line, and I just broke it up with some hatch marks, and it makes it look more realistic. So if you have some straight lines and it doesn't look realistic, think about breaking it up with some hatch marks, some stippling, because in nature, we don't really see clean, flat lines. So things that are jagged, a little bumpy, things that have lines around them that aren't necessarily perfect or uniform, that are going to be more organic in style, is going to be even better. Now, I'm letting my work dry right now. I want it to be able to paint on top of it, so I'm giving it some time. Let me fast forward here. So you can see that when you have pigment right onto the paper, how bright it is. I'm going to use some orange now. Clean off my brush. I'm going to get some orange on a clean brush here. And I'm going to use that top left circle, and I'm going to dab or stipple just little dots to create texture of what this orange is going to be. And once I have enough darker and highlight areas, I want that white to be there. I'm going to go back into my orange and then define the edges. So I'll clean off my brush, get some clean water, put it back in that orange, and I'm going to define the edges of that orange there. Just going around slowly, using the tip of the brush. I'm going to be careful where it meets the other orange because I don't want it to bleed into that yellow. So I'm just going to work my way up and around and then be very careful where they meet, right there. And then go back in and get some more orange and make a darker side. This side's going to really be dark because it's the full orange effect there. I want it to be a little bit further behind. Dark things usually go into the background, so this is giving the illusion that things are overlapping, even though they're not. It's just pigment on a flat piece of paper. And so now I want to take that orange into the other circles as well. So I'm going to go back, clean off my brush, wet my brush again, and I put it back into orange here, but I'm like, oh no, I need that to be wet. So I'm going to clean off my brush again. I'm just going to get clean water, and I'm going to reactivate this yellow by putting clean water on it, and that's going to loosen up the pigment. And so when I put this orange on, it's going to blend, and it's going to be lighter because it's mixing with that yellow. Now that orange is going to look like it is popping out in front of the other one. And then I'm going to have a dark side, and I'll just be very careful as I bring it around. You can see when I have a straight line on there, it becomes very noticeable. So I will just break it up with some short sort of hatch marks or cross hatch marks. And I'll even do the same up in that other top left or top right one as well. What I'm going to do is just get my brush a little bit wet. I had some color on there, and then I cleaned it off just a tad bit so that the colors wouldn't be too bright. And And then I realized, hey, you know what? I need him to be a little bit brighter. You can sort of see that really strong lines really distract and doesn't make it look so natural. So I'm sort of just scratching them out. I'm trying to make some lines, the illusion of curves, just with my brush strokes so that it looks more rounded. I want some light spots. I want some white spots shining through. And so while I'm doing that, I'm going to let these dry for a little bit. I'm going to clean off my brush. Oops, I went into the clean water. It's not the worst right now. I could empty it out. I should do that. I'll go clean it out. So while I'm cleaning out my water, this is a perfect time for this to dry. I could go get a hair dryer if I wanted to, but I'm working really slow. So just working slow is going to allow my work to dry as I'm going. Now, let's see. We need to tackle the bottom ones here in a little bit. But I want to make a complementary brown. So I'm going to take some yellow because I need a shadow. And so I'm going to take some yellow and just put my yellow in my palette because I want to mix there. And then I'm going to take the opposite of yellow on the color wheel, which is purple, and mix it together. And this is going to get me the perfect shadow. This is going to get me the perfect shadow color or the dark color. There's multiple ways of doing this in art. The complementary colors is just the easiest. So if you're using orange or yellow and you want a good complementary color, think purples, think blues. They're really good to get you those browns. Straight up complementary colors work really well, but you can also use secondary colors as well. And this gives you, without having to pick a brown, you'll get an orangish brown that is just the right color. So just taking a little of that orange and mixing it with the purple or a little bit of that yellow and that purple, they're going to give you great shadow colors. So now I'm just taking those shadow colors in, and if I need more, I'll mix more. They're not really hard to mix. If I was painting something bigger, I'd mix a lot more at the moment, but since I'm not, I can just mix that color. And a nice way if I run out of colors is just to go back and add a new color I made to all of them, and it brings some harmony into it. So I'm going to go in, mix some more. I took some more orange this time, cleaning off my brush. Now I'm going to go in with that purple, and this is going to make a pretty dark color. And that dark color, you can see it right here, is going to stand out really well. And I'm using those brush strokes in a hatching mark motion and a curved one, sort of like what we did with our pencils when we did the pencil set cheat sheet. And so I'm using that to give the illusion of curve, of form, of this being a sphere and no longer a two-dimensional circle on a piece of paper. Whew! I hope you're pausing as you're going and not going too fast. Just go slow. It's just you and me today working on this. Now I need to work on those bottom ones. And so what I'm going to do is take that brown color, that dark color, because I want it to sort of be like, I don't know, like these ones are above and on top. And so these are going to be bright on the top. They're going to be orange. They're going to be yellow. But the ones below it are going to have to be a little bit darker because I want them to be a little further back. And you can see as I put this color in, it's really pushing that top left one back further because of how dark that color is with that other one overlapping it in front of it. So I'm just going nice and lightly and just trying to make sure that I don't have any strong lines that are going to cause people to be like, what? What's that? So now I'm going to go in with that brown that I used as a shadow, and I'm going to use this as sort of like the light color on this one. And so I'm just going around, and I am taking this color, and I am making a circle. And then I'm making a shadow, a core shadow, across it. Boop, 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 boop. And then I'm going to have a highlight there. And the highlight's going to be a different place because when fruit is growing on trees. Usually I think fruit grows on trees. Well, they can grow on a vine too. I need to do more research on fruit. Anyways, but depending on where they are on the bush, on the tree, on the plant, they're going to have other things overshadowing it. There's going to be other light sources, things that are bouncing back. So all your light sources aren't going to be in the same place. Now, if I take that same color, make a giant circle, it looks very distracting compared to the others. It doesn't look like a form. So what I can do is go back in and, let's say, make a darker brown again and put that right in sort of like the center, making that dark area, that sort of core shadow area around here, and then finding my highlights. And you can still see that line. Can't you see that line still? Where that orange, that first orange line on the bottom right is there. And what I'm doing is just putting in the colors. This is just another way of doing it. And once I have that, what I'll do is take a clean brush with wet water, and then I'll just blend it together. So this is another way of doing a way of creating form with color with your watercolors. And so it gives like a nice bright background, or sort of this illusion of like a heavy of weight behind it. And so when you're doing this is great sort of practice to just sort of think of these different ways of approaching a watercoloring, is that there's many ways to get what you're looking at, and what works best for you is going to be maybe a little bit different. Now I'm taking this dark color, this dark brownish orange, and I'm stippling or dabbing in some texture at the bottom of this middle orange. Just playing around, seeing if I like that. It doesn't look really great right now, so I'm just going to put in a dark line of color over here on this bottom right one, see what that's like. I'm just messing around. And I realized, like, okay, I like sort of the stippling, but I don't like the big spaces between it. So I'm just going to blend it in a little bit more by stippling those things a little bit closer together, and then trying to put some stippling next to the highlights. Now, this other one, we got to start thinking about how do we want this to be, this bottom left one. And so I'm going to go in with this brown, and I'm thinking as I'm putting in some darker values into my other ones, because I want to work these all together. I want them all to sort of feel like I'm making them at the same time. I'm not just doing one at a time, but I'm doing multiples as I am, and I'm building the layers up. I'm putting more paint on, and it's giving us this layers of depth. Now I'm making a really dark brown, and please pause this video anytime you need to. And just cutting it down a little bit with some more orange there. And then I'm thinking, okay, there might be a shadow on top of this. There might be a shadow below this. And so I'm just making a little dark area there. And I might make a dark area above it to just show that, like, hey, this is where the shadows hang out in this sort of neck of the woods. And I could do this for all of them. I could do it for some of them. It really just depends on my mood and what I'm seeing, whether the reference photo has it in or not, or my imagination wants it in there or not. So there's multiple ways of making. So now I'm just going to take a clean brush here, and I'm going to get some clean water, and I'm just taking this brown, and I'm just sort of making sort of a sepia tone sort of look to this, and taking away that hard edge on the paint that I just put down, and to give it sort of dimension. Whew, I hope you're doing well. Remember to stretch, take breaks, pause your videos. Now I'm going back in with more orange. I'm going to get some highlights, get some brighter edges there. I'm going to pull that into my work. I'm going to give the illusion of, I think, motion or form with the brush strokes. I'm trying not to get perfect straight lines. You can sort of see that straight line there, but then I cut through it, and I make some motions with my brush to make it look more spherical. So I'm the illusion of a curved line around the edges. Now, I got 3, 4 pretty good oranges. A couple need some work, but now what I can do is let it dry. Now, this is an important time to let your work dry. You can clean out your water, talk to a friend, but once it's dry, you can start working on it again. So I'm just taking some clean water, reactivating and blending out some of the harsh lines on the work that I did. And now I can start painting on it again. At this point, I'm thinking that these oranges are on a plate or a table. So I'm just going to take some of this purple and I am adding it as a shadow. So a great way of adding shadow to anything is using its complementary color. You don't need a lot of it. I'm just using a little bit and diluting it with some water so that it's not so bright. I'm doing bright in certain areas where there might be a darker color shadow, and then some lighter areas as well. I'm sort of not going all the way around it, but I'm trying to think of where the highlight is and then to go opposite of it. If I was doing this on a table, those would look great for the distance. Anywhere the shadows overlap, you want to make that as darker, and you can just do that by adding another layer on that corner. That works perfectly fine. But I'm thinking, you know what? Let's do something different. Let's add some leaves. And I'm thinking maybe they need to connect. Maybe they need to go to a tree. Let's put these into a place. And those shadows will still work for us because the light is still projecting onto them. So let's add some green to this thing. I'm going to add a little green for where it might connect to, like a plant or a tree there, or the navel, the belly button of the orange. But let's start thinking about leaves. I'm just going to put a leaf in here. Think of a triangle, fill it in. They don't have to be perfect yet. I'm just trying not to get it into the orange at the moment. I am trying to just place these leaves in. So I'm just going to add a bunch of different green leaves here. And I might start with one color, but I'm going to use all these different greens. And my water's getting a little dirty here. I should probably clean it out. If you have water that's looking this bad, please clean it out. I'm using different lengths and different sort of shapes of these leaves. They're mostly the same because all leaves of a plant are going to be the way they grow. So I'm just using some short leaves, little triangles, little diamonds, and I'm just adding them in where I feel like they should go. I'm not worried about if they are fully colored yet or if other colors are coming through. I'm just thinking about where the placement of these leaves are going to go. And so I'm thinking about, I want things going in different directions because different directions create different sort of rhythm in our work. And it keeps a random pattern going so that people think like, oh, it's nature. Because nature grows in an organic way. There is sort of a pattern to nature. And if you look at it closely, you will find it. Mathematicians, authors, scientists, artists who are really good at drawing plants, they all look at plants and animals and they see these things really well with detail. That's what it means to be like a scientist. And it's what it means to be a mathematician. Just looking at the world through those things. And so as being artists, we're looking through the world, how we see things. And so I'm just painting these leaves in like they would be on a bush. They're going to be hanging sort of down. Leaves usually carry the weight of the plant because the branches are going up into the air and then the leaves are hanging off of it and down and allowing the light to bathe them so that they can be in photosynthesis. And so a plant, especially a fruiting plant, is going to have a ton of leaves. And so we can't go wrong with having small leaves, big leaves. We're just going to pepper this thing in with leaves. And I'm using different colors of green because some leaves aren't all the same color. New leaves are usually a lighter color. Darker colored leaves usually mean that they've been in existence for a while. There are usually a vein that is going through the leaf to get water to all the edges of it. And so I'm just painting these things in, just really loosely right now. And right now I'm overlapping my oranges because leaves are going to go on top of it. And it's okay if I can see my orange underneath it right now. That is totally okay with me. And so I'm just filling up those white areas with green. just green leaves. And you can see my colors or my water is just getting nasty, and I should really clean it out. But because I'm not, I'm just going to have that affect my colors. And my mistake here might show you why you don't want to do this. So, really getting true colors is by having clean water. That's what's going to get you the cleanest, most nicest color is by having clean water. Now, I'm not really blending any colors anymore, and I'm not really having to, let's say, do a wet-on-wet technique. And so right now, I'm not necessarily worried about cleaning out my water as much as I would if I was doing a wet-on-wet technique. And so I'm just going in with these greens and adding them where I think it's going to be the best. Yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but we want a ton of leaves on there. So you're going to spend some good time filling up with leaves. Now that you got a bunch of leaves there, let's just fill in the white areas with the opposite color green. So if I'm using a dark green, I'm just going to use a light green for the white areas. If there is a light green, I'm going to use a dark green for those white areas. And that'll give us a rhythm or a flow within the background colors. So you can see me just finding where that color needs to be. And I'm using some water in this color because I don't want it to stand out, and I want it to blend in with some of the colors around it. So like the shadow color, the oranges. I'm not really worried about the line on this because this sort of a wash is just going to go and fill in some of those areas so that it looks more full, like there is space behind there. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because if it was absolutely perfect, then you wouldn't have white areas, and it wouldn't look as realistic. So just mess around with it, adding this light green to the background, or the dark green, depending on what color your leaves are. So here I go, filling it all up. Please pause your video, and once you're done, come back. All right, now you're back. Now what I'm going to do is thinking about edges. It looks all right now, but we can clean some things up. So I'm going to go back in with some green and make some of those leaves even darker now. I'm going to find the ones that are overlapping, and I'm just going to try to make it stand out more. Make those leaves look like they're actually going over around these things. So I might take a really dark green and I might go and outline some leaves. I might go and put some veins into the leaves so that they look like they have texture, implied texture. I would do this dark over light, and then you could do a light over a dark one if you want to. Just remember that the lines or the veins of a leaf are always going towards the tip of the leaf. And so I'm just going back in and making some highlights, some dark shadows here, and making some of these leaves stand out a little bit more compared to the ones in the background. Now the dark ones are going to come forward more. So just like our oranges before, the dark on the orange is making it go back, but the dark in the green is pulling it forward. And so we are going to be picking which ones of these leaves do we want to stand out for our public? Which ones do we want them to force to look at? And the more details or the more darker you have these leaves, the more they're going to pop up for your viewer, and you can force them to look at it. And you can create a rhythm and a flow that will create harmony within your work. So it's up to you how you're doing it. Now, I'm going to add some brown here for the navel of the orange. I'm going to think about other navels of the oranges. I'm not done yet, but I'm sort of thinking about where do I want to place these? I might put them at the top. I might put them at the bottom. I might put them where they just be. I might not even put them at all. I don't have to. So I can allude to it if I want to. And those are just like the points where my stems are going to go. And if it's too watery, I can push away some of that water with a paper towel. I can dab it. I could dry it with a hair dryer to give that illusion more. And then I can just make some thin strokes like that to make the stem. Now, stems on plants aren't perfectly straight. They kind of bend, they kind of move. So you can make them sort of jagged and turn in different directions if you like. To create that illusion by making things sort of bend and turn, it sort of makes it look like Mother Nature was drawing it. You can connect them together if you want to. Maybe these two connect together at some point. And it's not going to look perfect right now. It might look like ornaments on a tree or something like that. But we're just going to leave this stuff here, and we'll come back and address it in a little bit. So it kind of looks like there might be some branches in here, and I'm just using the very edge of my fine tip brush there to paint those in. Now that I got an illusion of where things are, I can sort of cut away things I don't like. I can start adding some things in. There are some areas in this that I'm not happy with right now, and so it's time for me to fix those areas. I'm just going to go in and think of maybe adding some highlight with this yellow. It's not really working. That's okay. So what I can do instead is start making brighter areas with my orange. And so now I'm going in and using that orange now as like a shadow color. So like where that orange above it is hanging out, I can use that bright orange with that muddy water. Oh, not great. Need to clean that out. And I can get some shadows on top of some oranges just by using that orange color. I can also make shadows of the leaves just by following their direction. So like this leaf right here, I'll put a shadow just by putting a darker orange under it. And now it looks like that orange has a shadow on it for that leaf. And so you could do this with all the leaves if you want to. It's up to you. You could also use purple if you wanted to. But I think sort of that orange really makes a nice sort of shadow of a leaf, if that makes sense. So now I'm going to go in and repaint some leaves because they've dried more. And when leaves or anything is dried, you can put a fresh coat on top of it and it'll make it darker or more opaque, which means less see-through. And so I'm just going around and adding these little lines now to my work and trying to make it sort of stand out, making things look a little bit cleaner, neater, trying to put in some details for people to look at. I can paint on top of things to make things go back. I can add some shadow to push or pull things into the front or behind. And so I'm just messing around with these things and making it the way I want it to be. Now, you're going to have to make it the way you want it to be, and the way you're going to make it might look a little different than mine. Right now, this is looking pretty good. There are some things that I personally want to correct on here by making things darker. I want to put in some contrast now because I want people to be like, oh, wow, that's really standing out. And so what I'm going to do is think about how do I make things a little bit darker in certain areas to really make certain things stand out. And I can just use darker color paint if I need to. I can use complementary colors if I need to. But as I'm doing this, I'm going to be thinking about the overall work. I'm not just looking at one little area, but I'm sort of blurring my eyes right now, and I'm thinking about where do I see things that need to. Is it too heavy with orange in one color? Is it too green in one area? Is it too yellow? And I'm trying to create a balance or a harmony to it. Once I have that, I can go back and start working on making those oranges a little bit more textured, maybe having some dark areas, really, really punching those, because the oranges are our thing. We're going to revisit. They're the subject of this work. And so we really want them to stand out now that we got those leaves built up. And so that might mean going back in and making things a little bit darker, making things pop a little bit more so that they stand out again. Because we don't want to lose them in the leaves, because this painting isn't about leaves, it's about the oranges in the leaves. And so the oranges have to be the thing that grabs our attention, the thing that says, oh, wow, yeah, those look like oranges, you know? And so once we build up the whole thing, we can really just tune in these oranges to the way we want them to look and feel just by adding more dark colors. Remember not to paint over all the highlights, because you do need them. But if you do see some highlights that are like, let's say, standing out, they're not really like, they're like really bright. Well, guess what? You can dull them down just by putting some orange on top of it. I should be doing that here to that middle one pretty shortly, because I don't want a spot in my work to like take everybody's eye to that one spot unless that's where I want them to look. But if I want them to look around the whole thing, this is when I'm starting to think about the whole image. How is this whole image working? So I'm taking some purple in now to give some outline. I'm not doing the whole thing. I'm just doing certain edges with that purple, the complementary color. And that's just giving me sort of like an outline so people can be like, oh, that's sort of where this one starts and ends. But I'm not trying to go crazy. I'm also using that purple for the stems, for the edges of the shadows on the leaves. It is a really good way of getting a shadow there and making some distance. I can also use it as hatching, cross-hatching to make the illusion. There's a lot of different things that you can use as complementary. Finally, I'm cleaning out my water because I just can't stand it. I need some clean water. This also allows my work to dry, so I'm not overworking it, making it too blurry. So as it dries, I can now go back, and because it's drier, I can get some brighter colors straight on here that I probably wouldn't have had if it was wet. And so just by giving it the chance to dry a little bit allows my colors to pop and stay and hold faster and longer while I'm working and while you're working. So just messing around a little bit now, trying to break up some of those strong lines. Think about hatching, dabbing. Think about those highlights, making sure that they're not too bright. All right, we're so close to being done. Now we need to take some of this darker purple and add sort of lines, suggestive lines, saying that this is the very back. This is the very bottom of our work. You don't have to do it for every part, but you can even do it in the leaves if you want to suggest shadow, to suggest veins, those things. You can go in with that purple. You can add it. It might get too purpley. If it does, be careful. It might become distracting. So use it sparingly. And if you do use it and you're finding like, oh, it's a little too dark, just take some clean water and then blend it in or wipe it out, and you should have something that's a little bit more muted and less strong of a line, so it doesn't look like it is, a coloring book type of thing. So we're just blending it out a little bit, and that's going to give it a look a little bit more realistic. So we're just using that. And so now we have this thing that looks like maybe a couple good oranges hanging out. So pause if you need to. If you don't, let's move on. Yellow. I'm going to take some yellow now. I'm going to take some of that yellow and I'm going to put it in sort of like the highlight areas. If I need to mute one of those like bright highlights, I might dab in some yellow to soften those areas. I can add highlights on the edge of my work by putting it next to one of my darker areas. I can go back with brown now and add some extra layers on top of those brown lines. I'm not going to do the whole line. I'm not taking a straight line. I'm just going to skip some areas, and that's going to give me like a dark area and a light area of these works. And let's revisit that blue leaf. Let's just mute it down with some clean water, and you can sort of see that it sort of pops out and it overlaps now. And I can go back in with some purple, and I can make more shadows. I can make more veins on some work. I can make things stand out now to make sure that it really stands out when I'm working on this. So now, students, we have everything in place. We know where everything's going. We've taken it and we've gone slowly. Now it is just making adjustments to make it look the way you want it. I'm going to use some greens to make things stand out a little bit. I'm going in time lapse because the rest of it is just little moves that you're going to take all that information we just did and play around with it to make it your way. So this is just me going at it and making this stand out a little bit more. As I'm messing with the darks and the lights and adding more leaves here and there, you can do it your way. I might also add some highlights on top of the leaves by taking light paint and putting on dark leaves, and taking dark paint and putting it on light leaves, giving them some texture, things like that. Another thing you can do that people like doing is taking a colored pencil and putting some lines around it. I might outline some things. I might step up, shade in some things with colored pencil to give it another layer. You can if you want. You don't have to. But once you're done with it, take a picture of this and upload it to your Google Classroom assignment. Can't wait to see what you made. Great job today.